Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome or welcome back, whatever the case may be. My name's Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this episode. Today I want to take a deeper dive into something that I mentioned in the first episode. And what I talked about in the first episode was that to be successful at networking, to build the network you want and derive the benefits from that network, you have to believe that that networking works. You have to come at it with the belief and understanding that networking will work. So let me start by sharing my belief. And I believe that anybody who's successful at networking shares this same attitude. And my belief is simply this, is that networking works. Now I say networking works, and I have to lop on top of that a caveat. And the caveat is that networking works, but it may not work always how you want it to work. For example, you go to a networking function and you're headed to that networking function because you're trying to build a law practice, or you're trying to build an insurance agency, or for whatever reason, you're trying to connect with clients, customers and clients. And you go there and you come away from that event and you met a lot of people and you didn't get any clients, didn't get any revenue out of it, but you met somebody who gave you a tip on a great vacation, great inexpensive vacation that you and your spouse could take. Networking worked. It didn't work how you wanted it to work, but it worked. So networking works. And while it works, it may not work when you want it to work. So you're headed to that same function or a similar function, and you're meeting lots of people, and you're trying to grow a business, whatever it might be, and you come away and you feel empty-handed. You didn't really find any clients, didn't find any sources of revenue. But then 3, 4, or 5 years later, somebody approaches you, they hung onto your card, and they said, I met you at an event years ago, a couple of years ago. I didn't need you then, but I need you now. And they hire you. Networking works. Didn't work exactly when you wanted it to work, but it worked. Likewise, networking works, but it may not work where you want it to work. You go to the networking function and nothing comes from it. But on your way home, you stop at the grocery store, the convenience store, get a gallon of milk, and you happen to run into somebody who may have been at the event, or may have been somebody totally random, and the topic of what you do comes up in conversation, and you pick up a client out of it. Networking works, it just didn't work where you expected it to work. But networking works, and that's my belief, is that networking works. And to be successful at networking, you need to adopt that belief, some sort of similar belief that networking is this thing that kind of works in the background, and it's serving us in ways that we can't totally understand, but it's going to benefit us somehow, at some time, somewhere. And so we need to have the belief right from the start to be successful with it that networking works. Now I run into people all the time. By the nature of what I do, I'm talking about networking with groups, talking about it with individuals all the time. And I am met from time to time, not always, because a lot of people I talk to are very, very interested in networking and want to become very, very successful at it, or more successful at it. But I talk to people from time to time who are very skeptical of networking. They have this dim view of networking. They have a dim view of people who proclaim they're networking. And when they go to events or anything they do, they're just of the mind that networking doesn't work. And it's this cheap tactic of lazy salespeople or over-aggressive salespeople, and they'll proclaim they don't network, or that networking doesn't work because they've been burned by it. And that's how they conduct themselves. So what ends up happening is they avoid anything that has any inkling of networking. They don't go to events. They don't go to after hours. They don't engage with people that they don't know because they just don't believe in it. They believe it's a waste of time. They believe that people who are trying to connect with them, who might be trying to meet them, that they're trying to connect them, and all those people have ulterior motives, and they're suspect of them. So they're not going to engage in any sort of conversation. And so it never really gets beyond just the initial, who are you, what do you do? And everything kind of gets shut down. And if they happen to go to a networking event, get enticed to a networking event, when they're there, they conduct themselves with that skeptical attitude. Like they're either skeptical of people or above people, and it just comes through in how they conduct themselves. And as a result, they're really kind of repelling people. They don't necessarily intend to be doing it, but they're kind of repelling people. And they're looking at the event, or they're looking at the interaction, and they're looking for all the things that are not good about it. The venue was crowded. The air conditioning wasn't working. The food was horrible. People were too happy. People were too sad. People were being pushy. And they just capture in their mind all the negative things that are happening. And truth be told, no event, no encounter is perfect. None of us are. And if you really want to look for things that are bad, you can find them. They're there. The food's not always great. The coffee is not your Starbucks coffee necessarily. And so there are things that you can talk about and why things didn't work, or why things that were bad about the event or the interaction. And so if you're looking for bad things, by nature you're not looking for the good things. And so they come away and they have poor interactions with people, and because they have poor interactions with people, it really doesn't go anywhere. And so by virtue of coming at the activity or the encounter with a belief that networking doesn't work, and networking is really something for sleazy salespeople to engage in, nothing will come from it for them. And that's where it shuts down. And because nothing comes from it, it feeds back into their belief that networking doesn't work. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. They can point to the activity, the event, the encounter, and say, see, it doesn't work. It's a waste of time. And so they push further and further away from it. But contrast that to people who believe that networking works. And perhaps that's you. Hopefully it's you. If not now, soon. But the people who believe networking works, they embrace opportunities to meet other people. It might be an encounter online, through social media, email, and we'll talk about those things. It might be at an event. It might just be running to somebody, or a chance meeting on an elevator. They believe that it works, and they believe that meeting someone and having a conversation with them and listening to them and asking questions and sharing information and all the things we're going to talk about as we continue on in this series, they believe that something's going to come from it. They don't know what. They don't know when. They don't really know where it's going to happen, but they just kind of trust, and they believe that networking will work. And in time, it does. And they can point to it and say, see, networking worked. I met that person 3 years ago, and it took this time for that to incubate and come to fruition, but it worked. And because they're excited about that, it just carries over into everything that they do. So, to be successful at networking, you need to believe that networking will work. You need to have that mindset. Think of networking as this great adventure. You're out, you're meeting people, you're meeting new people, you're interacting with people you already know. Think of it as this great adventure. You don't know where it's going, but something's going to happen with it. And you just need to engage in the right sorts of activities. And we're going to touch on all of these things. You need to engage in the right sort of activities and just trust that it'll work. It might work in the moment. It might take time. It might happen in a way that you couldn't possibly expect. But trust that it's working. And if you do that and carry that optimism with you, you'll attract people to you. You'll build a network. You'll develop relationships with people, new people, and further relationships with people you already know. And in time, something will come from it. So, important lesson, believe that networking will work, and it'll pay dividends.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.